Yo. So when I was an adorable little shit in the 90s when computer games came in cereal boxes, I loved me some creatures slash genetics slash pets games. I gleefully tortured oddballs. I spent weeks perfecting the perfect Persian cat mix so I could torture it. But my favorite creature game of all time was this ugly monstrosity, Creatures 3. After hosting a recent retro game night, I was inspired to dig up this nostalgic treasure and see if it was as cool as I remember it being, and I'm going to tell you the story of how this went. But first, let me explain what exactly is going on in this thing. A race of intelligent aliens called Who the Fuck Cares do highly unethical genetic engineering projects for fun, foreshadowing, but abandoned their entire ship at the first sign of a mild inconvenience, which was their least favorite science experiment making an appearance. As an egg. While abandoning their ship, they also left behind their precious pets to a horrid, certain death. Great folks. These pets are called Norns. Norns are squishy little dumb babies who love everything, especially making more Norns. The bad guy creatures are called Grendels, which are these nasty little disease-carrying goblins who find true joy in one thing and one thing only. That's beating the shit out of every Norn it can sniff out and hunt down. There is also something called Ettins, but we don't care about those right now. So of course as a kid playing this game, your goal is to raise Norns and protect them from Grendels by building complex machines, monitoring the health of your Norn population, and frankly, once you get bored, just start doing crazy unethical experiments. Because at its core, this is a simulation game. Norns and Grendels are little rudimentary learning AIs with little brains that have actual neurological connections, which are reinforced or broken down over time by external positive or negative reinforcement. I mean, look at this! They made this in 1999! In 2014, Sims are so fucking dumb, they literally had to code the objects to tell the Sims what to do. Meanwhile, in the 90s, your little computer pets start to develop an eating disorder because you forgot to give them toys. The only thing they associate with fun is eating cheese! Okay, so it's 2014. I am a 31-year-old woman playing Creatures 3. Of course, at first I attempt to relive the game in the way that I used to play it as a tiny gremlin myself, which is to immediately throw all the Grendel eggs into a piranha pond and play with just the Norns in my perfect little utopia where I am God. I quickly got bored of this, however, because there's no challenge, and I mean... So, we jettisoned all the boring Norns off the ship and replaced them with my newly patented race of Grendel hybrids. As long as there's no Norns on the ship for them to murder, everything should be fine. Right? Grendels are hardwired to enjoy violence. In fact, I suspect it's the strongest resolver of the boredom status. Granted, two Grendels trading fisticuffs generally won't result in anyone's untimely demise due to how tanky these fuckers are. But my goal in this experiment is to guide the evolution of the new species to something that can eventually be trusted to take over as a stable species across the ship and possibly allow me to reintroduce the other creatures at some point, without mass genocide. I started as one generally does, teaching the little creatures to speak, giving them loving names, and encouraging healthy forms of play. I expected some pushback on that last point and was prepared to punish perpetuators of violence, but frankly, half the time it's impossible to tell who's hitting who, until someone keels over dead. Still, I did my best. The built-in punishment/reward interactions of the game are generally effective, and the creatures in Creatures 3 are quite obedient once they can actually understand the pre-coded words and phrases that they're taught to understand. So things were going as well as they could have. But when the first generation hit adulthood, the BDSM orgies began. Another problem with the Grendels is they seem to carry bacteria. As a kid, I always figured this was from their home terrarium, which was a very moist-looking jungle with stinging and biting insects everywhere. But even when the Grendels are raised in the temperate climate of the Norn home terrarium, they are constantly coming down with various illnesses. I went through cycle after cycle of treatment, quarantine, and re-releasing my little beasties, but the only thing that came from this was more BDSM orgies. I even built machines all across the home terrarium that would continuously disinfect the Grendels as they walked by, resulting in a cacophony of alarms and questionable animation choices constantly assaulting my senses, and yet the plague persisted. So now I'm friggin' stuck with a ship where the Norns have been eradicated in the interest of handing the ship over to their enemies who are living lives of filth and debauchery due to an unsatiated bloodlust that I cannot breed out. I'm wondering if it's time to walk away from the game when I remember that whenever I purchased this game from Steam, there were DLC packs that my child self had never even dreamed of. What's up? This is current timeline Steel. I am not re-recording the first part of this video. No, I will not elaborate. Unlike the default Norn breeds, who just came in pretty colors, the DLC Norn breeds actually serve separate functions. The one that caught my eye in particular was the Hardman Norn, which seems to be something like a soldier ant, so to speak. This gave me an idea. What if I created a scenario where the Hardman Norns would take back the ship from the reigning Grendel horde? This would be no small task, as there's something like 15 to 18 Grendels roaming around the ship at this point, using the Norn's home as their base. Despite this, I am hopeful as I installed the mod, and hatched my very first variant Norn species, and oh my god, they are the cutest Norns I have ever— wait, why are they hitting each other? So apparently, Hardman Norns are programmed with anger issues. As my babies beat one another, I found myself in a familiar cycle of pulling the bickering babies apart and punishing unwanted violence. At least I can say the Hardman Norns are easier to train than the Grendels, and I quickly succeeded in minimizing babies' first brutalities as I began to teach them how to speak. Knowing their fate as warriors, I proceeded to distribute names that seemed appropriate for their coming heroics.